I just wanted to say real quick, I know, amazing cut. So I don't really understand why some people in the comment sections are saying things like, nice lesbian haircut. I support you coming out. Why? Why? Or the always for some reason prevalent, did you do it yourself? Or was your barber high? I don't understand this. Everyone sees and knows it's amazing. Stop joking around about my haircut in the comments, okay? In any case, Bethesda has gotten to the point where it is so replaceable, so lost in the sauce, that everyone who can is speaking out against them because everyone can tell that Bethesda is on its last legs and something massive has to happen with it. So people like Chris Avellone are now officially coming out and saying, yeah, Bethesda hated us for making the best Bethesda game out there, aka Fallout New Vegas. They hated everything that we did because we did it better. And I think more people are going to come out and say these things as time passes and Bethesda loses even more power.
Today, we are gathering to talk about Fallout New Vegas, where Chris Avellone sat down with TK Mantis to talk all things Fallout for 3+ hours, which is really cool to see. I've yet to give the full thing to listen, but it's certainly produced a ton of headlines. We're talking about everything from New Vegas 2 to a remaster and what that could look like, and also a PowerPoint that Bethesda made Obsidian sit through. And boy, do I have thoughts on that. I never bought into the whole idea that Bethesda and Obsidian are cool. And this is that kind of generational beef that this type.
Wait, I think I explicitly remember Maddie saying there was probably no beef.
Move by Bethesda absolutely creates. So we're going to walk through all of it here. Was there ever a New Vegas 2? We'll talk about that. Is the remaster possible with Bethesda? We'll talk about that. And then, of course, this PowerPoint is, I think, the juiciest part of it all. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Get comfortable. Let's start off with the New Vegas 2 headline. This one comes from Games Radar, and they write, Fallout New Vegas 2 was real at one point before Obsidian's plans quickly evaporated, says senior designer, but a revival will not happen in the next 6 years at least, if ever. In a recent talk with TK's man,
I gave this prediction years ago at this point, that Todd will never let a remaster happen. Now, on a theoretical scale, he's always gonna leave the Fallout New Vegas remaster open for his Microsoft overlords to be happy, because it's on the table. But this is what Todd's gonna do. This is what Bethesda's plan is. They're gonna be like, well, we're currently making Elder Scrolls 6, so we can't really fit in a Fallout IP there. So it's gonna be Elder Scrolls 6, then it's gonna be Fallout 5, then it's going to be like some kind of remaster, or these remasters are going to be in between. And if the remasters happen, it's going to be probably Morrowind, and it's going to be Fallout 3. Remember, Todd's secret love child is obviously Fallout 3, and he loves it, and he's obviously going to prioritize that, even though pretty much almost everyone unanimously, well, I shouldn't say unanimously, I did a poll once, and well, it had like something like 2,000 votes, and it was way more better in the direction of Fallout 3 than I thought when asked people, do you want a remake of Fallout 3 or a Fallout New Vegas or some other option? And the majority, like 70-ish%, was on Fallout New Vegas, but 30% were on Fallout 3, which I thought was actually amazingly high numbers. I thought it would be less. So people are interested in Fallout 3, but Todd Howard has like excuses on piles of excuses to why Fallout New Vegas remake needs to be pushed back 50 years at this point.
Avellone was asked about Fallout 2 developer Black Isle Studios canceled Fallout 3, which was codenamed Van Buren. Specifically, TK's Mantis asked whether his theory that New Vegas acts as if the events of Van Buren happen is correct. It turns out TK's Mantis is partly right, and that there are certain things that were going to take place in Van Buren that do happen during the time of New Vegas, Avellone says, other than what Avellone calls the Caravan Wars, which refers to the conflict between the NCR and a merchant mafia that would have been a major plot point in Van Buren, which we saw a little bit in New Vegas, but not a ton of. Van Buren's story influenced New Vegas. That said, Avellone confirms he did try and set up Van Buren for New Vegas, and that's where we get to the thrust of this story. That's why all these nukes go off, because I'm like, well, I need to destabilize some regions, like not wipe out factions, but I need to shake up both the Brotherhood, I need to shake up the NCR, I need to have them even more.
Oh, that's a jab at the Fallout TV show. I honestly think at this point we are probably gonna see even Tim Kaine. Yes, Tim Kaine. Even Tim Kaine speak out about against uh, Todd Howard and the way that Bethesda's running things. And keep in mind, Tim Kaine was the dude who said, "Oh yeah, I made the lore about this thing that happened in the Fallout universe, and you know what? It's an amazing thing that the TV show takes this lore and throws it in the trash and replaces it with something everyone hates and is stupid and doesn't make sense." Todd, please give me a job. Please give me a job. Yes, I even think that Tim Kaine is gonna slowly but surely start saying things that are negative towards Bethesda and Todd Howard, because they're done. They are done. Starfield completely destroyed Bethesda. And the two expansions that have followed Starfield have pretty much just put the final nails in the coffin. It's over. No one expects anything good from Bethesda.
Each other's throats in California, he says. And so that was the reason for some of the precursor decisions for some of the DLC stuff and some of the stuff in the core of New Vegas, when we still thought we'd be able to do a New Vegas 2 or whatever the title would be, but that quickly evaporated. He continues on saying that a sequel will not happen for at least the next 6 years, if ever. But again, we're hearing that this is confirmation that this was part of the plan here. So obviously that brings about the question, like, what happened? Right? For those who have not tracked this generational beef between Obsidian and Bethesda, which is so frustrating, because I really do think if things didn't go the way they did, we probably could have more Fallout games right now, and I think Obsidian would be more willing. I mean, they've put it out there that they're willing to, but Bethesda clearly wasn't happy with what happened with New Vegas. Let's just jump into this PowerPoint thing, man, because for me to get my full thoughts out about it, New Vegas 2 and what prevented it, I'll just say this shit's so stupid. So this comes from PC Gamer, and they write, Fallout New Vegas dev says Bethesda made the studio sit through a whole PowerPoint about all the things Obsidian did wrong here. Let's read the quotes. The reason I'm making these expressions and hesitations about it is because despite what I thought would be a cool examination of Fallout, it was so different from the core experience that was obviously a huge turnoff for a lot of people. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is talking about dead money for Fallout New Vegas. This was a pretty controversial DLC at the time because it takes all your stuff away and challenges you to play.
Yeah, dead money is currently even considered the weakest Fallout New Vegas DLC. I mean, I have played Fallout New Vegas, I don't know how many times, and I have not once played Dead Money. Yes, literally.
Differently. It's really weird, and certainly at first I get why people didn't like it, because you wanted things more like old world blues, right? Just more New Vegas, but just more personality, more environments to explore, more weapons to get, right? So that's what more people were looking for, but what you got in Dead Money was a real, as Chris Avellone put it, like an examination of Fallout and sort of what makes greed, and like you taking everything in front of you. That sort of stuff I thought was really cool, but it was mainly because I played that DLC. I mean, I remember playing it at launch and thinking it was fine, but I really turned around on a corner and started to love Dead Money way after the game had come out, because it just aged favorably. It was so bold and different, and given that New Vegas is this real complete package with all of its DLC, it's kind of refreshing that it offers something a bit different, challenges you to play differently in these modern Fallout games, which really, when you think about it,
yeah, I don't personally think that a game that makes an expansion and does things differently from the base game to a very radical degree is necessarily bad, but it is understandable that most people are like, hey, this game that I like and play had a DLC, and the DLC is suddenly a puzzle-solving game. It does. Well, that's not the one-to-one example here, but that does throw people off, and it's understandable why Dead Money is, to this point, still not seen in the most favorable light by the super majority of people.
a lot of them kind of do. Like, Fallout 3 never challenges you to play differently. Fallout 4 certainly doesn't. New Vegas also doesn't outside of this DLC, so it just stands out to me in that way, where it's a real strong survival experience among also the themes of greed that kind of present itself by the end of the DLC. TK was kind of like saying how great it was, and then we got here Chris kind of being a little surprised by it, and we kind of get into that. He says, and while TK's Mantis tried to brush aside these concerns, Avellone insists that when it came to sales and reviews, it matters. And also Bethesda used review scores against us for the DLCs for like why they
Yeah. Before, by the way, the Bethesda lost its grace, I think it was actually Chris Avellone or someone at Obsidian from that time who said, oh no, Bethesda never used the review score against us or did any of this bad stuff, because they were afraid of Bethesda's power. Some people don't understand this is how the game is played, but a lot of people do understand that this is exactly how the game is played. While you're powerful, everyone sucks up to you. The moment you are not, well, people actually start airing their real opinions.
They didn't want to keep doing things with us anyway, even though they didn't want to keep doing things with us anyway, so whatever. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that this is not the same story as the Metacritic one, right? This is talking about the DLC. The Metacritic bonus that we heard about, where Obsidian was supposed to get a certain bonus payout if they hit a certain score, but they missed it by 1.
Yeah.
That is a separate story here. So now we see that Bethesda continued to just pound away on Obsidian with their review scores, including the DLC, which is so funny because at the end of the road, when you look at New Vegas as a complete package, they made some of the best DLC of all time. Like, it completes the narrative, it gives you choices, new ways to play, it expands the base game in like a narrative sense, you know, where you start talking to certain characters and start to learn more about their backstories that tie into certain DLC. Again, speaking of dead money, like Veronica's a much more interesting character when you have dead money available to you, that sort of stuff. Chris Avellone continues saying, it was fun. They had a whole PowerPoint, not even about the DLC. They had a whole PowerPoint about all the things Obsidian did wrong. And we were like, wow. And they showed it to us. And we were like, okay, this is hugely morale boosting, of course, being sarcastic. He continues saying, I thought we made a good product for you guys that kept Fallout in the public.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Even though the very initial reception towards New Vegas it wasn't the super greatest because there were a lot of bugs. But still, the reception towards New Vegas was good, and when it got fixed up and patched up to a level that is, fitting of consumption on a proper level, people loved it.
Consciousness, but you guys don't seem very happy about it, despite the fact that you reaped a lot of rewards for it. So yeah, now I can finally get to some thoughts on New Vegas 2. I think this is why it didn't happen. I don't think the Metacritic bonus plays as big of a factor, but we see repeat offenses here. I don't know if this really represents how Bethesda and Obsidian view themselves right now, but this is why that partnership never went anywhere when it obviously should have. We needed more Fallout games. What's so funny about all of this is that we now have what many consider to be the best modern Fallout game was being destroyed by Bethesda, presenting PowerPoints of what they did wrong, when for many fans, it's everything that they did right that makes.
And by the way, presenting a PowerPoint to a game that had how many expansions are there even for New Vegas? I'm sorry, I legitimately is it not the Fallout with the most DLCs? I think it is. I think it is the Fallout game with the most expansions. You can't tell me the Fallout game with the most expansions is bad. Bad games don't get expansions. Bad games get shafted. Well, Starfield got expansions, but that's because otherwise I think they would be in breach of Steam terms of service, so people would be able to get their money back.
This game stand above the bugs, the glitches, that sort of stuff. We'll have a video coming out on Retro Rebound. I just did a full playthrough of New Vegas on PS3 to get the Platinum Trophy, and that game is busted on that system, but I still thought the game is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So it addressed what the fans want, which is more Fallout. But at the time, there's no denying, this is something that I talked about when we went into Josh Sawyer's thoughts, kind of a post-mortem on New Vegas, and how it took a while for people to really love the game. I remember reading like Twitter replies.
But Maddie's still not saying the obvious thing that all of us are thinking, and that is obviously Bethesda, and especially Todd. hate Obsidian and New Vegas because it's the best thing, game in the franchise. I mean, I would also be honestly pretty pissed if, I did a thing, then I contracted someone to do a small thing, and that small thing turned out to be the best thing ever. I would also be quite pissed about that, needless to say.
People going, what? It always was loved. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Like, it took a while for the public to turn that corner. There were many people who liked it a lot, but the general consensus was like Fallout 3 DLC, Fallout 3 2.0. It was that sort of take for the game. And so at the time, Bethesda reacted like, hey, this is doing damage to our brand. We shouldn't do this. Like, look what you guys are doing. Look at the reviews. Look at the Dead Money reviews and how people don't like this. And obviously, they kind of had a comeback later with the DLC between Lonesome Road as well as Old World Blues. But you can see here why New Vegas 2 never happened, why that quickly evaporated, because I'm sure there was a level of like,
this doesn't make sense. If Bethesda thought that it's so bad, they would never greenlit the other DLCs. That's how these things work. But Obsidian doesn't have the right to make a DLC for a game they were contracted to develop. They don't have the rights. They can't. That's not a thing. Bethesda gives them the right and green light to do it. And they, for some reason, did. So the idea that all of this was so bad, and Bethesda knew it's so bad, and there were actually legitimate criticisms of it, kind of evaporate when you understand this simple principle that if everything was so bad, why the hell did that game get new DLCs? How does that make sense? Did you just magically decide to pump in millions into something that's not even making $10?
Hey man, you guys don't like what we're doing here, but New Vegas made a lot of money. And it's so funny because Bethesda is still collecting off of it. Just last year, New Vegas had like a 10-year anniversary, or 15 years, sorry, and 10, 15, well, we're getting to that age now, ladies and gentlemen. It had a 15-year anniversary, and Bethesda sold a whole New Vegas Collector's Edition with the game as a code, by the way, that you couldn't redeem until like the following year, which was ridiculous. But nonetheless, what you have here, again, is a situation where I can now see and understand why New Vegas 2 never happened. Now, certainly I think like enough time has passed where there should be some sort of burying the hatchet. Again, I think maybe Obsidian has moved past that because they've said a number of times now that, look, like, we're happy to work on a new Fallout game. At the same time,
Obsidian is saying that publicly because behind Jesus Christ, English hard. Behind closed doors, Bethesda has already said no. They are saying this publicly because they are hoping Microsoft sees that and says, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. Because Microsoft has the last say in this. Again, they own Bethesda. If Microsoft decides that's happening, it's happening. The TV show, again, Todd Howard has always been against the TV show. He had been approached multiple times before the Microsoft acquisition to make a Fallout TV show. He said no every single time. Probably because he was afraid that there's going to be another Obsidian situation, maybe. But he said no every single time. And then Microsoft said yes. And what does Todd Howard have to do in that case? Well, he just has to go along with it because it's not his company. And this is what Obsidian is trying to pull off. They're trying to get Microsoft to pay attention and give the green light. Because Bethesda behind closed doors has already said no. They're piling pressure with this public stunt.
I think one of the biggest mistakes during Phil Spencer's tenure was not immediately greenlighting a new Fallout game. The fact that we were getting rumors last year that Xbox is greenlighting a new Fallout game is crazy to me. And that I think it was Fallout 5, where for Bethesda Game Studios, that's years and years down the line, presuming that they're making it. But this is one of those moments where you got to come in with a forceful hand, I feel, and say like, hey, like we got to get this done. We need more Fallout. And I think the New Vegas style Fallout is what people are looking for, not just like in the terms of narrative control and reactivity, that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think if you took Fallout 4, think about Far Harbor, by the way. Fallout 4, it's got solid enough first-person shooting, good on-foot exploration. Like, it checks all the boxes, and I really love Fallout 4. But I'm saying that if you just took that system and handed it to another developer and said, okay, make new environmental assets like you did with New Vegas, put it in a new place, and in the case of New Vegas, expand the role-playing element.
Gesundheit,
right?
bless
Given that
you.
I imagine this new team would have more time to do a Fallout spinoff, I think that could reap an incredibly fun Fallout game, if not one of the better ones. But again, we're seeing here that Bethesda was clearly very protective of Fallout, and they thought that Obsidian was doing damage to them with New Vegas.
No.
It's just so funny. I mean, the idea that they got sat down for a PowerPoint, it's like, here's what you did wrong all this time later.
They got an 84 Metacritic score at that time. There was no reason to think damage is being done. None.
Is like the definitive Fallout game. That's a cold, harsh reality. That is a tough pill to swallow, and I do wonder how Bethesda feels about that. Clearly, they understand the value of it because we've had leaks and rumors now for a while that we're going to get a New Vegas remaster kind of in the style that Oblivion was remastered in, where it's kind of towing the line of a remake. However...
Wait, I wanted to speak on this. We're going to talk about the Oblivion remaster separately, but I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. Now, technically it is, but you need to understand Bethesda. They hate the Oblivion remaster. The Oblivion remaster at this point has fallen into an absolute unplayable state of disrepair. And Bethesda's not even pretending that they're going to do anything about it. They're just leaving it to rot. Because the Oblivion remaster was it just showed what's happening behind the curtain. It showed everyone at Bethesda, it showed also Microsoft that Bethesda's lying. All these excuses of, oh, you wouldn't like the old stuff, you're just looking at through rose-tinted goggles and whatnot. All of this was lies. And the Oblivion remaster proved it because the Oblivion remaster sold like fucking hotcakes and people loved it. It came out and people praised it. Massively praised it. And the things that people talked poorly about it were literally Bethesda decisions. For example, removing the genders and being like a they, them, or whatever the hell they did there. I even forgot that. That's it. People hated everything but that Bethesda did with the Oblivion remaster, and people loved the Oblivion remaster in general because it was the old game. New people who never played any of the old Bethesda stuff, even Skyrim, played it, and they loved it. Overall consensus about the Oblivion remaster was spot on perfection. Pure love. And now Bethesda is leaving it to rot because they need to destroy it, because it directly just shows everyone who's paying attention that Bethesda's lost. They don't have what it takes. And all of their excuses are just what? They wanted to tell everyone, oh, the old stuff's not actually good. Well, here's the old stuff, and people love it. So now Bethesda is leaving the Oblivion remaster in complete state of disrepair, and it's probably never going to get fixed. You only can now rely to for mods to fix it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's going to crash, it's going to this, it's going to that.
Chris Avellone had something interesting to say about that in this headline from Video Game Chronicles. Bethesda doesn't have the engineering know-how to remaster Fallout New Vegas. Okay, let's give this a read. He says, just real simply, I don't think Bethesda has the engineering know-how to make a remaster of New Vegas at all. Avellone added that he hasn't played last year's remaster of Oblivion.
Based. This is also something I have brought up. It's the fact that literally Skyrim is getting bugs at this point. Iterations of Skyrim, the new anniversary editions and things like that, they're getting bugs. Bugs that have not been seen for decades. And Bethesda can't fix them. This has not happened for... This has never happened before. And now it's happening. And that's because Bethesda has absolutely no one who knows what they're doing.
But he said he had heard some people enjoyed the visuals, but overall it seemed like the reception was kind of negative. Now, this here, I think, kind of devalues, and I say this with all due respect to Chris, I think it devalues a little bit of his point, because it's like, you gotta play that to say, like, Bethesda doesn't have the engineering know-how, because, again, I think that what you had with Oblivion was, I really like the Oblivion remaster, but it did have a lot of problems performance-wise, again, because of Unreal Engine 5 and the lack of optimization with that engine and how developers kind of use it as a brute force tool. You get a lot of games that run like crap on it. And so, in my experience at least, Oblivion remaster was that same story there. It was awesome to have all the content packaged in, though. Having Shivering Isles there, like, that was really cool. But all in all, I feel like you gotta play it to say, like, Bethesda doesn't have the engineering know-how, because what they did with Oblivion Remaster was very different from other remasters that we have seen here. That said, as Avellone gets deeper into it, I think the point starts to justify itself beyond the headline, because the headline only tells part of the story here. TK's Mantis suggested that it's currently rumored a Fallout 3 remaster would potentially use the same method, and that people would want it to be done with New Vegas as well. Avellone replies, well, I mean, just pragmatically, it would make more sense to try out that process with Fallout 3 before going to New Vegas, just to see what all the problems and issues are as a result. And you think, other than that, fundamentally, it would be an impossibility for them. And Avellone says, yeah, for one reason, claiming that Obsidian studio head Fergus Urquhart chose not to give Bethesda the original source code after development had ended. The very last milestone for New Vegas was, please deliver all the source code and the ability to make the build, and we'll pay you like $10,000 for that milestone. 10,000, by the way. Can you imagine, in AAA development, 10?
That's literally pennies.
K to deliver this work. That's crazy. Now, what the milestone really meant is that all those assets were given to Bethesda. That means they can recreate the game at any time. So, for reasons unknown to me, says Avellone, but I have suspicions, Fergus decided not to cash out that milestone, and he did not.
Oh, of course he decided to do this. What are we talking about? Even back in the day, 10K for something like this was not a lot of money. In fact, it's kind of an insult. Hey, poor shit. Spits in face. Here's 10K, give us everything. And that everything is obviously worth more. And after you belittle, demean the guy who made the best Fallout series, and you're lying straight up to his face saying it's bad, and everyone thinks it's bad, which is an obvious lie, even at that time. Even though at that time it was less of a lie, but still a lie. Of course he's not giving you the source code for effectively pennies. That's just an insult.
Deliver it, end quote. He added that it's not a strange decision if you feel, which would not be out of the realms of possibility, that he felt that the New Vegas experience cheated him out of X amount of money, in which case cutting off the revenue stream from that product for a time would be a possibility. I could certainly see that, and I'm not saying that's the case. So Bethesda doesn't have the source code for New Vegas, TK's Mantis asked, seeking clarification. He says they may have aspects of the code, but everyone I talked to after that period of time said they have no idea how to reassemble it. So there's also that element there. Now, given Jez Corden has reported that New Vegas is getting some sort of remaster, but it's furthest down the line, there could be a grain of truth to this, that whatever this Fallout 3 remaster is going to define that New Vegas remaster in more ways than we can imagine. Again, is it possible that Obsidian still has the source code, Fergus and the team at Obsidian?
You know what's strange about this one? It's the fact that I'm pretty sure Microsoft also acquired Obsidian Studios. So, while Obsidian Studios, when talking to Bethesda, is still their own entity, they are still all under the umbrella of Microsoft, which means Todd technically has the ability to go running crying to Big Daddy Microsoft and say, where, we want the code. So this is not actually a legit problem unless Obsidian doesn't have the code, which is kind of, it is possible, I guess, but it's kind of hard to imagine at the same time. You know, they probably obviously stored something as important as the code for a game they built. You know, it just makes sense. So, this is also a thing that's happening, which means Todd is completely ignoring this possibility and is probably sweeping this under the rug. Because again, Todd, being Bethesda, being way bigger than Obsidian, has obviously all the levers to pull in contact with Microsoft to get the code if he wants to. Now, granted, unless I'm being mistaken and Microsoft did not buy Obsidian, but I'm pretty sure they have. Because they give Obsidian a lot of money to develop Avowed and Outer Worlds 2, which were both huge disasters, by the way.
Obsidian buried the hatchet with Bethesda, and they're like, yeah, we'll give it to you. Like, is it possible things have moved on since then? Absolutely, because Chris Avellone left Obsidian a long while ago, but we also know he's well connected to Obsidian, given that like he's revealed that like Avowed 2 was going to be a thing, and that we saw that Obsidian themselves kind of admitted it in a interview with Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, where they talked about how Avowed didn't do that well, but also Outer Worlds 2 didn't, but they're going to look into doing more Avowed. So no doubt, I think he's still got his connections and he would know this sort of stuff here. I think this is the one I feel the most mixed about because Bethesda did just remaster Oblivion and it did come out in a way where it was a top 10 selling game. A lot of people were really happy about it. I enjoyed it enough, but I wish I enjoyed it more, is kind of how I walked away feeling about it. But I don't think I'm in the majority on that one here. But otherwise, I think when you kind of look at like holding back the source code, again, we go back to generational beef. That's item number 3 on the list. Okay, we got Metacritic, PowerPoint presentation, no source code being handed off. Like, you can no longer convince me that the reason we didn't get more Fallout from Obsidian isn't because like Obsidian wanted to do more things. It's because working with Bethesda probably sucked, and I'm sure Bethesda felt the same way about Obsidian. They're like, fuck these guys, we don't want to work with them. So I just found this to be a deeply interesting set of answers.
Yeah, there's a lot there, obviously. Anyway, that was Mr. Matty Slop, 10 out of 10. Bye!